In this video, we're going to be talking about body mechanics or the pivot. Basically, how does the body rotate back and through to create a powerful golf swing, the ones that we see on TV every weekend. So when I demonstrate this, it's really great if you follow along with what I'm doing. You can get an idea of what the pivot's supposed to look like and what it's going to feel like, and it makes it easier for you to teach to your players. Okay, so when I talk about body mechanics, I'm really talking about this, is just the movement of the body absent the arms and the club. All right, so this is what we mean by the pivot right there. Okay, so and all the things that go into that. So if you're watching this, you can get up, stand up, copy me, get your feet about hip to shoulder width apart, cross your arms this way. Stand straight up and try to get your weight about 50-50. We'll bend forward, add a little knee flex, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tilt a little bit. So the way we tilt away from the target, if I'm a right-handed player, so I'm going to go this direction, the way we tilt is you take the lead hip and you bump it just a little bit towards the target, and you can take the sternum and tilt it back just a little. So we're going to have a little bit of tilt. So in the manual, it kind of describes all the different things in the setup, but you want 6 to 8 degrees of tilt. You want a little bit of tilt. You don't want to be straight up and down, and you don't want to be tilted too much. Okay, so just a little bit of tilt is good. So here we go again, feet 50-50, bend from the hip, add some knee flex, you have your arms crossed, and then we're tilting. Once we tilt, we should still keep our weight about 50-50 at this point. Okay? From a target line view, feet, knees, hips, shoulders all parallel. Okay, here we go again. We bend forward, add some knee flex. The inseam should be over the heels, and your back should be fairly straight. You know, everybody's posture is a little bit different. You'll have a little rounding usually up at the top with your arms hanging down, but you don't want this whole rounded look, okay? And you don't want to be super rigid. You should just be bending forward in a fairly relaxed position. So here we go with, again, the manual has all the checkpoints for you. So that's our setup. So from a face-on view, we're going to talk about weight distribution now. We set up, we're about 50-50. As we begin the takeaway, our shoulders are going to rotate and our hips are going to rotate, and the weight is going to slowly start shifting. The pressure is going to be shifting into the trail foot. All right, so somewhere in here, before we complete the backswing, the weight is going to be maybe 75% of the weight on your trail foot, and then as we transition forward, we're going to start moving the weight back towards the target. So it'll look something like this, maybe 75, and then we transition. We begin transitioning even before we complete the backswing. We'll start transitioning forward. So what we would want is when we go back, our hips will stay fairly centered, but then when we bump forward, the left hip will cross its normal starting point, okay? And at impact, your weight is going to be probably 85-90% onto your lead foot at impact. And then we'll go ahead and finish the swing. Couple things to look at: shoulder rotation about 90 degrees, hip rotation 45. Now, not everyone does it exactly 45-degree hip rotation and 90-degree shoulder rotation, but that's a good thing to look at. Somewhere in there is good. Okay, from this view, that's what we want. Target line view, when we're pivoting back, we want to try to keep our spine relatively stable. We don't want our spine straightening up, and then through impact, we don't want our spine straightening up before we hit. So we'll stay, we call it stay in our posture until impact, and then we release out, okay? The last bit that is important is just we call the kinematic sequence of the golf swing, and it's very similar to the kinematic sequence of hitting a baseball, throwing a football, anytime you're throwing a javelin, whenever you're propelling something towards a target, the body has to generate power to do that. And to keep it fairly simple, I like to just talk about throwing a baseball because most people have done that. So if I was going to throw a baseball without my hips at all, it would be really hard to throw a ball until my hips clear and then I can throw. All right. Same thing in golf. If your hips don't rotate, it's very difficult to hit a golf ball with power, with authority, to get the ball first in the ground, all that stuff that we talked about when it comes to club mechanics. So great body mechanics is going to support the club mechanics we need to hit a golf ball. All right, so the sequencing will look something like this. So once we get to the top, if I'm 90 degrees with my shoulders, 45 degrees with my hips, I'll start bumping forward, and my shoulders should not be starting to rotate too soon. If my shoulders rotate too soon, then you're losing potential power. So it'll look something like this: 45 and 90, a bump, and the hips begin to rotate, open, and then at impact, the hips maybe 30 degrees open. Shoulders should be relatively square. Some people, they really rotate their hips more than 30 degrees. Everyone will be slightly different, but we do not want the hips and shoulders parallel at impact. That may be our starting point, but that's not our impact point. Our impact point is hips rotated. The lead leg should be straight, and you can see how I do that. As my hips rotate, my left leg starts to straighten up, okay? So that's a little bit on the kinematic sequence, some of the key concepts of the pivot, or what I call body mechanics. And if you can develop really good body mechanics with your young players, your freshmen, the beginners that may be on your team, that's going to really help them as you start working on club mechanics as well. So, okay, thanks a lot.